Thank you everyone for joining us. Good afternoon, good morning. Today's session, it's going to be for the next generation ISE telemetry monitoring and customer reporting. This is the second webinar that we are going to have. And in today's webinar, we are going to talk about DataConnect. My name is Emmanuel Cano. I'm Security Consulting Engineer, and I will have the pleasure to talk to you about this great feature. So if you weren't able to join the last webinar, you can now watch the recording in our ISE YouTube channel and verify how log analytics and infrastructure monitoring can help you to increase the visibility of your ISE environment. I really encourage you to watch the video and we'll ask any question in our ISE bar, WebEx ISE bar. Regarding these two features, one of the comments that I got after the webinar was this one. They say, "Hey Emmanuel, these features are really great features, but I'm afraid the data is still nice. Would it be possible to extract that data?" And the answer is yes, absolutely. These are really great features, and absolutely we are going to be able to extract the data and pull the data out of ISE. And the way that we are going to achieve this is by using this feature called DataConnect. But before I dive into the details, I will want to take a minute to ask this question. And the question is, which reporting options do you use for ISE? Right? There are some options when it comes to reporting, and some of them uses third-party software. So please take a moment to answer it and see what are the best or what are the most common options we have. One of the options, the first option I can give you is I rely on Radius LiveLogs. All the options include the CM, API, built-in the reports. I'm pretty much sure some of you have used this option too. So in this case, these are most common reports. Okay, I see the answers are starting coming. Thank you everyone for your participation in it. And I say they rely on Radius LiveLogs being the most common answer, followed by built-in reports on ISE and CM being the third in place. So as we are seeing, we are relying from many years, I could say, we are relying on Radius LiveLogs and building the report, build the built-in reports on ISE. Okay, let's give a couple more seconds to see if there is any change on the answers. And I'd say 60% of the people are relying on the Radius LiveLogs. That's great. Okay, we pause here. Thank you everyone for participating, and thank you for your answers. As we see, most of the customers as well have been using Radius LiveLogs as the first tool to look at when it comes to the reporting and to know what's happening in our network. And this is exactly the point I will want to start with the agenda and explain and go a little bit in more details about why we need next generation options. If you are seeing, we have talked about this in the previous webinar. So there is a need to have more options, and those options need to be the next generation one. And in this session, we are going to dive into DataConnect, and for sure, I've prepared not one, not two, but 3 small demos for you. At the end, I'm going to provide you some resources. Apart from the normal resources, I really want to show you some of the resources we have available for DataConnect specifically. And for sure, we are going to have a Q&A session for any questions you may have after the demos. Starting with the reports. So the reports provide a big picture of the data on demand, but unfortunately, it works as all of nothing in terms of columns and in terms of information we want to see. This is one of the reports I got from my lab yesterday. And well, the information is good, but another common option is to use radius of TAC as LiveLogs because the report is too static. If we want to remove any of the columns, it's pretty much impossible to do so. As I said, we have the most common option, which is the option for the radius of TAC as LiveLogs, where we can see what is happening in our network. But in order to know more details, in order to have even more details of going deeper to one particular log, we need to click on this details icon, and this limits us to do more manual steps while we are investigating. Again, these are very good tools, very good options to troubleshoot or to see what is happening in our network. But again, these have some limitations. So for reports, as I mentioned, one of the drawbacks, and this is something that we have heard from our customers, something that we have heard from you directly, it cannot be modified. So for instance, if I want to just get a specific data for the report, it's most likely possible because those are static and those are pre-built reports. This is something that is going to change now. It's something that we are going to change with the DataConnect, because in DataConnect we have fully permission, fully options, and DataConnect allows us to have a fully customizable reports by applying filters with SQL queries. With a DataConnect, we can use SQL language to perform and to apply filters to get a specific data, and we are going to see how in the demo. Another drawback of using reports is that the reports most of the time it doesn't allow us to have very good correlation. So in this case, we need to download, we need to correlate manually 2 or 3 different reports. And in this case, this is not the real-time data, as this is something as more likely as a snapshot. On the other side, with DataConnect, we have full correlations. We have the ability to concatenate. We have the ability to use SQL queries again to perform join operations that will allow us to correlate the information for 2, 3, or more tables from the views that are available in DataConnect. What's the more important part and what's the most important point for this? This is regarding the time. So with DataConnect, we are going to be able to go directly to the data, and we are going to have real-time data. And this is something that we are going to talk about now. With DataConnect, as I said, it's possible to get what you need when you need it. And this is pretty exciting news, at least for most of the people where I have talked to, because at the end, we are going to be able to get access, read-only access to ICE database. How many of us have thought about this in the past? Say, instead of just pulling reports, why not get access to the database itself and just pull the data, extract the data, but not all the data, but just specific fields, just specific columns. In this case, we are having the opportunity to get access to the data and therefore data in real time using any of database software, any or almost any of the CMs solutions such as Splunk, or even more sophisticated and newer solutions such as Python. But this is not limited into the database software or CM. We can also use Excel. How many of us have worked with Excel in the past? So Excel is also a good option to extract the data directly from this secondary MNT, right? Secondary monitoring troubleshooting, and finally have our own and customized dashboards. No more static reports, no more radius LiveLogs, we are going to be able to build our own dashboards. Okay, there's one point that I want to highlight in this slide, and this is related to secondary MNT. You may think why we are using MNT and not the primary. The reason for this is that we are just leverage the resources for the secondary MNT, and this won't impact the ICE production environment. We are basically splitting the load, and we are having the primary MNT working with the logs, while we are leveraging the secondary MNT resources to get this data. So that's the reason behind this design decision. And every single time that we want to work with DataConnect, we need to keep this in mind. In a normal scenario, and this is very common for large, medium, or even some small customers, where they are thinking to have, or where they are considering to have not one, but two MNTs. So in a normal scenario, as I mentioned, we are going to have DataConnect working on the secondary MNT. Again, this is by design. But what happened if we don't have a secondary MNT in our initial deployment? So in this case, everything will be in charge of the primary MNT. And as soon as we enable, as soon as we include a secondary MNT in our environment, we are going to be able to have DataConnect. But here's one point that I will want you to know, and this is regarding how we are going to move the DataConnect to secondary MNT. And this is something as easy as disable and enable the feature so that we can have all working on the secondary MNT. Okay? Let's suppose that there is one issue with our primary MNT, and the primary MNT goes away. What happened with secondary MNT? In this case, we are going to have secondary MNT get promoted to primary, but anything won't change in terms of DataConnect. DataConnect will still there, even though the secondary has been promoted to primary. On the other side, in case we lose our secondary MNT, it won't be any issue because this primary MNT will take cover of DataConnect. These are the common scenarios, and these are our most important points that we need to consider. Resiliency, high availability are also covered on DataConnect feature. So how do we take advantage of this great feature? There's basically 4 steps that we need to consider in order to use it, and all of these steps are covered in the demo. I prepared a demo from scratch where we are going to be able to see how to do each one of those steps and the results of each one of them. We started with the first step. We need to enable it. As opposed to infrastructure monitoring, DataConnect is not enabled by default. So in this case, we need to go to the dashboard and enable it. Then we need to export the certificate. This certificate will be used for authentication purposes. Without the certificate, the connection won't happen. Once we have the certificate, we need to import in the machine which has the software for database, and then we need to monitor this connection from the GUI directly. Okay? So let's have a quicker but detailed look at each one of those steps. And the first one is enable the DataConnect. Okay, one option is to do it by GUI, and there is another option to do it via API. And fortunately for us, I have prepared both the scenarios. So let's start with the user interface, and let's see how easy it is to enable it while I explain 2 main points for you to consider. Okay, so in this case, we need to go to administration, go to system settings. Okay, on the left, you are going to see the DataConnect, and as I said, it's as simple as sweep it. Okay, we need to enable it, and then we need to enable password set the password, and set an expiration date. Okay? Please make sure to follow the criteria. In this case, the password must contain 12 to 30 characters. If you type less than 12, you won't be able to configure and you will see an error, right? The password expiration date is going to be from 1 to 3,650, and the 90 days is the default one. So after this expiration date comes, right, you won't be able to connect, right? Set the expiration date, password expiration, hit save, and that's all that you need to know. As simple as that. Okay? With this, we have enabled DataConnect, and DataConnect is ready to be used. Right? Oh, one quick note here: we don't need any other license apart from the essential license. Okay, so as with log analytics and infrastructure monitoring, DataConnect does not need any other license besides essential. And this is very important because there's no extra cost for you. Another point to highlight is that I really need you to know that we need to avoid the exclamation mark and the @ symbol in the password because it won't allow you to save it. So please avoid these two symbols for me. As I said, the second option to enable it is by using the API. Okay, and these are the API, and these API calls are available on the DevNet site. But I went ahead and I created Postman collections, and I created some additional API calls examples for you. And I also created one script for you to use and one script for you to customize and change as well. Everything will be found in the public GitHub repository. So feel free to go to the repository. You will see, among other repositories that I've used in other examples, you will see the DataConnect, and here you will find the Postman collection along with the script that I'm going to use today. So everything is there. So feel free to go and to download it. Okay. So in this case, let's say our DataConnect is enabled using user interface. And next step is to export the certificate. This certificate, as I mentioned, is going to be useful for authentication purposes. Okay. Here we have the example. And one thing to highlight is that the trusted certificate, the DataConnect certificate is under trusted certificate, and this certificate is self-signed. Right? For those who are thinking perhaps I can change and I can sign my certificate using my internal CA, please do not try to do so because it's not gonna work. Okay, DataConnect certificate can only be signed or can only be changed if the certificate has expired or it has been compromised. Those are the only two scenarios where we are going to be able to change the certificate. And then, as I mentioned, once we export the certificate using this command, okay, and this command is also well documented in our DevNet site, we are going to be able to import the certificate in the Keystore in our PC. Okay. Before doing that, I really encourage you to review and double check the common name. Okay, this common name needs to line up with what you see in the certificate. And as you can see, the certificate has the common name from our secondary MNT. That's the reason why we need to have a look at this MNT and not with the secondary MNT, because the certificate is tied with the secondary MNT. At this point, we have enabled this DataConnect. We have export and import this certificate. The last step, the last phase that we need to consider is to monitoring. Right? We have enabled it. We have all the steps needed. Right? So in this case, We just need to monitor it. Fortunately for us, ISE comes with some alarms for you when it comes to DataConnect, and these alarms will appear in any of the 3 scenarios. If the licenses expire, if the password expires, or if the certificate expires. There's one example you can see at the bottom of the screen, and this is directly from my lab because I had to change the password as it was going to be expire in the next 3 days. For any other change that we make on DataConnect, there is also a good place that we can go, which is the this configuration audit report under reports. So in this case, you are going to see something that has changed from DataConnect, and you are going to see the changes that have been made when you use DataConnect. Okay, so we have monitoring phases, and in this case, every single change that we make will be logged and will appear in our configuration audit report. With that said, it's time for a demo. So didn't want you to know a lot of information regarding DataConnect in theory, but I really want you to see this amazing feature on action. So here I have 5 different examples, being the first one, very common example, very common use case where people have been asked throughout years regarding filter NAT by IP. So if you go to Radius LiveLogs and you want to filter the NAT IP, it won't allow you, at least for Radius LiveLogs, because it's only available for IPv4 and IPv6. If you want to filter by IP, you will need to go to the reports. So that's going to take a little bit more time. Second example is about getting the authentication by ISE node or by allow protocols, authentication by network device name. And the 5th example is a real example where I'm going to join 2 different tables. I'm going to get the information from 2 tables, and I'm going to put it in one single table. This is totally possible, and this is something that at least I know that it's not possible with the reports. Okay. So let's have a look at it. And in this case, it's just a quick disclaimer. In this case, I'm not going to use the user interface to enable DataConnect. I'm going to use the script that I'm going to explain in a moment. As I said, this DataConnect script is already available on my GitHub repository, so feel free to download it. We'll start with checking the current status of our DataConnect. So that you can see it's already disabled, okay? And as I said, I'm going to use this simple script with 5 different functions. First function will enable DataConnect. Second function will help me to set the password. This is the password I'm going to use. It's a super secret password, I know, but you can change it for sure. Third function will set the password expiration. In this case, I'm going to change it to 48 days. Finally, it's going to check the status and check the password status. This script has taken the API calls as base, okay? Just to let you know, in order for you to see all the calls in with a little bit of delay, I've set it up as sleep time for 1 second, and then let's see how it works. As I mentioned, we are enabling DataConnect, which is the first step before setting any other configuration. We need to enable it. We are setting the password. We are setting the password expiration date. And finally, we are checking DataConnect status. So as you can see, it's using secondary MNT command name, host name, and everything is working. So what I did in 1 minute in user interface, I could do it in a couple of seconds. So here I'm going to check if the changes have been made. Okay. In this case, we have everything that we have seen. Okay, we have everything that we configured. So next step is to check the reports to see if all the changes have been logged, as I mentioned in the presentation. and see if all the changes are logging correctly. So go to change configuration audit, and you can see the ISEWebinar administrator has made some changes in the Data Connect feature. And if you want to see even more details about what type of changes the ISEWebinar administrator did, so you can do is click and see what exactly has changed. Right? This is something really cool in case someone is starting to play with Data Connect. Okay. Once everything is going is done, it's time to go to the second step of the process. And second step is to export the certificate. So in this case, I'm going to go to Trusted Certificate. Okay, give me just one sec. Okay, good. So I'm going to go to this Trusted Certificate, not System Certificate, but Trusted Certificate. And I'm going to export the Data Connect certificate, as I mentioned. Right? So let's go to System Certificate. Here you will see Data Connect certificate over here. Yeah, just scroll a little bit down. There is the certificate. Just one quick comment. If you don't enable Data Connect, you won't see the certificate. Okay? Once the certificate is downloaded, the next step is to import it in the Keystore for my PC. And this is the command that I'm going to use. This command is already on the presentation and it's already documented, right? So we need to type it, okay? Hit enter. It will prompt me for the password. Again, I'm using the super secure password, but I encourage you to change it. You need to type it twice, hit enter, and finally, after you review all this data, you need to hit type yes. At this moment, the certificate was added to the Keystore, as we can see, and Data Connect is ready to be used. In my case, I'm going to use DB Visualizer. This is one of the software that is going to help us to create a connection. But as I mentioned, you can use Excel, you can use your database software as long as it supports the following configuration. Okay. I'm going to start the connection by defining a name. In my case, I'm going to define the name as Webinar Data Connect. I'm going to change the setting format from server information to database URL. This is very important because we are going to point the connection to the secondary MNT. Okay, this is the 10.52.13.157 is my secondary IP, and we are going to check if this belongs to the secondary MNT very quickly. So let's go to deployment, and then let's go to secondary PAN, and there you go, 10.52.13.157. That's the secondary MNT, right? So by design, please remember that Data Connect will work with the secondary MNT. Another important point, Data Connect user is the one that you need to put. It's hard-coded, so make sure you don't use any other username. We are going to use the same Data Connect password that we defined during the script, okay? And that's all that we need to do for the connection. Now, let's go to the properties, driver properties. And here is where we are going to tell the software where to look at for the certificate that we imported in the Keystore. In my case, I'm going to use a download. I'm using Windows, but in case you are using Mac, the behavior is pretty much the same. You need to point this software to the correct path so that it can take a look and find the certificate. Again, the password, as you can see, we are using password 3 times. And finally, we need to define the JKS as the store type. Okay, everything is set it up. Let's try the connection. Let's test it. And if you see the connection message, as we are seeing here, that means the connection is successful, right? And another point to verify if the connection was successful is by looking at the Data Connect tree and see the views. If you see these views and you can see the number of views, that means the connection with ISE is successful. Okay. Let's have a quick look at some of the views. These are not the only views we are going to have. Actually, ICE team is working to get even more views for you to use, but these are the main one and the first of those views. So here we have endpoint data. Okay, every single column in endpoint data is going to help us to get even more information for every single endpoint. As you can see, well, we still have some columns. We still have additional columns that in my from my mind, I don't remember do we have this amount of columns on the reports. We have key performance meeting. We have network access users. So these are the users I've added in the identity team, identity tab, and we have network devices, network device groups. We also have information from the list of the nodes, where the nodes that are part of my environment, but we also have information for the radius authentication. So that's pretty much the table we are going to work today. And all the examples, almost all the examples are based on those tables, right? So we have radius authentication, we have radius authentication summary, and radius authentication per week. Those tables are available for us. As I mentioned, the first example is to get the information for 3 different columns in the table, but using the IP address. We are going to filter by IP address. I just want to show you that using the radius LiveLogs is not possible to filter by this IP address. And this is something that most of us have been looking for many years. So in this case, that starting today, it's fully possible. So in this case, I'm going to use 10.0.0, which is one of my network access device IP address. And we are not going to pull all the data, all the columns from the radius authentication view, but we are going to pull only 2 different columns, 2 columns from the entire view. And this is something that, as I mentioned, is customizable. You can get 3, you can get all of them, you can get only 1. It's up to you. Here, well, we have a lot of information. I've been using a testing tool for that. Okay? And well, the main point is to show you that the filter that you can use in order to limit the output of the information. Again, this information is in real time because it comes directly for the secondary MNT database. Okay? Right? So let's go back to the webinar SQL. Let's see if there is another point. But before, I want to show you the number of columns. Right? I wanted to show you this, right? And well, the second part is to check another IP address of network access device. So in this case, we are going to use 10.52.13.2.16. Let's run the query, and there you are. Again, we are getting a specific information from the table, from the database, and nothing more. So if you are knowledgeable about SQL, this is going to be very useful for you. Second use case that I have for you is authentication by ICE node. And this is going to give you the number of authentications. So you can see this line, you can see the type of query and how large this query could be. But in this case, we are going to have very specific information. So the output is clear. We have PAN, we have secondary PAN, and we are having different type of data because I've tested the 2 of them in different manner. Third example I have for you is about authentication by allow protocols. In my case, the allow protocols means the type of protocols that are part of the list. And the 4th example that I have for you is by network device name. Right? How many authentications every single network device name have had? In this case, I only have 2. TestIP and TestPC. We have pass authentication, fail authentication, and total. So you can, as again, you can work with the filters, you can work with the columns, you can do whatever you want. So the last example for this quick demo is about joining two tables. In my case, I'm going to join Radius Authentication Summary with Radius Authentications. So joining these two tables will give me this specific output and see how much information I could get. Again, you can join, you can apply a specific filter, you can exclude certain columns. This is completely customizable and dynamic. And again, this data comes directly from the database and it's going to be there in real time. That was going to be my last demo, but actually there was a very good question, very interesting question about reports that shows how many unique devices can authenticate to each policy in ICE. And that is a question in the ICE bar. So we decided to take that as challenge, to take that as an additional demo. And the way that I achieved this was pretty much easy. In this case, I'm only use policy set, authorization protocol, authentication protocol, the username, and the frame IP address. Right? These are the columns from the database, the Radius Authentications. As you can see, we have username, we have all the columns there, but in this case, I'm going to use only some of them. Okay, and here I'm using the Radius Authentication, and I'm going to show you what are the difference between the first and the second query. Second query is going to exclude those frame IP address that have the null in as part of the answer. So in the first one, we have the policy set name, which authorization rule is being used, the authentication protocol, we have the username that hit that specific authorization and policy set, and we have the frame IP address. What is the IP address for that username, for that device? What is the authentication, authorization, and policy set? For sure, we could have more information, but this is exactly the case. This is the example I wanted to show you, and this is how easy it is to play a little bit with SQL, add additional queries, add additional filters, where, join, and select. All of those reserved words from SQL are 100% supported, and it will allow us to play and to get a specific data whenever we want. And having said that, I think that's all I wanted to show you. Rigo, I would want to take a minute or two to answer any question the audience may have before going directly to the resources.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. So I am looking at the Q&A panel here, and I don't see that we have any outstanding questions. Looks like our amazing panelists have taken care of all of the inquiries. So I think we can go ahead and move on to the resources.
Their resources. Okay, perfect. Thanks, Rigo. Okay. Then we have two resources slides that I will want to cover very quickly. And the first one is this, which has all the resources regarding to the ICE webinars, to the ICE videos. We also have the compatibility guides. Now that we are moving towards the cloud, and now that we are moving towards the ICE 3.0, right? ICE 3.1 being this recommended suggested release, all of these resources could give you even more information and could answer any of the questions. But in addition to it, there is an additional slide, and this slide has additional information for DataConnect. Most of the information, most of the queries, and most of the configuration is already documented using the DataConnect inside developer site. We also have the DataConnect Open API, where you are going to be able to find all the calls that I use in my script. And also, we have an additional configuration example. This example is very interesting because we are not using DB Visualizer. we're not using Excel, but we are using Splunk. If you have Splunk or if your customer has Splunk, you can easily integrate and you can easily leverage the value of DataConnect. And last but not least, if you want to take a deeper look at the script that I created for this demo, you can go ahead the GitHub repository, download the Postman collection, and play a little bit around this amazing feature. I wouldn't like to finish my participation before let you know that everything that has been covered in this webinar and the last webinar are available starting on ISE 3.2. So if you are in 3.1, unfortunately, these features are not going to be there because these features are only and are part of ISE 3.2. And with that said, I really want to thank you everyone for attending.